Kaufman is alive. I look at comic books new and old. Today I'm looking at a new comic book, the newest issue of the Uncanny X-Men, issue number 7, legacy number 707, if you're into that kind of thing. It's written by Gail Simone, got David Marquez on the artwork, cover and interiors. We got Edgar Salazar. He's on a few pages on the interiors. I'll try to point those out as we go along here. This is the Raid on Grey Malkin, part 2 of 4. This is the crossover event between Uncanny X-Men and the Adjectiveless X-Men title. Got the two X-Men teams squaring off here. Awesome looking cover here by David Marquez. I honestly probably would have picked this up had I not already been reading this series just because of the cover. I really like it. Looks like an homage to the Marvel vs. Capcom games, where we had the Marvel characters on one side, the Capcom characters on another. In this one, we've got the two X-Men teams here, the Uncanny X-Men and the regular X-Men teams. The two leaders here, Cyclops and Rogue. So I've been reading both these X-Men books, so I've been kind of looking forward to this crossover event. The setup's pretty simple. We've got actually Calico here. She's one of these new mutants on the X-Men team, along with Ransom, Death Dream, and Jitter. These are some new X-Men. But she's been kidnapped, captured, taken to jail, however you want to put it, along with Jubilee. And Beast from the other team has been taken to this Grey Malkin prison, which is actually the old X-Mansion, which has been refortified into a prison for mutants, led by this character, Dr. Ellis, who we'll get into later. But so we got the two X-Men teams here. We got Rogue, Cyclops. I don't really understand their conflict here. I get Cyclops has a good point. He doesn't want Rogue's team to show up because there'd be too many X-Men there. It looked like an act of war, he said. But Rogue's not really listening to him. She just wants to help her fellow X-Men, Calico and Jubilee, best way she can here. Calico, one of the new mutants, she actually rides a horse. And the whole storyline going on with Calico right now is she or is she not a mutant? And I think the best guess at this point is that her horse is actually the mutant. And we even get kind of a little hint at that here because we got Rogue who's doing the narration here in all the green boxes here. This is Rogue's thoughts, but she's saying, how'd he undo his bridle? So the Gambit brings the kids here, and she's like, no, not the kids. But Wolverine's like, they got to go. They got a right to go, Moonbeam, which is his nickname for Rogue. And so they decide, yeah, the kids are going to come too. So this is kind of their first mission of the Louisiana X-Men. Gambit, he's got this Eye of Agamotto. And he's using it to, I think, teleport them, basically. So we got this Death Dream character. I don't really like the way that Gail Simone's writing this character. I mean, actually, she's kind of nailing the voice of what this, teenage, goth emo kid would probably sound like. But he's just very annoying. So, but, and this comic really feels like a Rogue book. I've said this before in, I think, one of the first issues in my review of this new Uncanny X-Men book, but this just feels like a Rogue title with some X-Men side characters showing up. As we get pretty much everything from her perspective, I kind of would like to see a little bit more from some of the other characters. It just seems to be mostly focused on her and kind of Gambit to an extent, which I do like. Gambit's one of my favorite X-Men for sure. So now we got some Edgar Salazar pages here from when we're inside the prison. Artist Edgar Salazar here. Definitely didn't like these as much as the David Marquez, if we're comparing. But just some fine work anyway. This panel here looks like it's taken directly from the Jed MacKay, Ryan Stegman X-Men book. The issue before this, the Raid on Grey Malkin Part 1. Looks like they kind of just redrew this panel, but it doesn't look quite as dynamic or rendered, but I like how we got Juggernaut. He's just got, Cyclops has Juggernaut just hanging back, waiting for the right moment to arrive here so he can run and gain a lot of momentum here. Now, one thing I didn't really like about this book is at this point in this story here, we're basically getting everything we've already seen in the last issue of X-Men. They're kind of just recontextualizing it for this issue, which is something I've noticed Marvel does a lot in when they have crossover miniseries between different books. They'll show a scene that already happened in a previous issue. It's just drawn by a different artist. They put some different dialogue in here, kind of telling it from a slightly different perspective. And that's what we get here, as we've already seen all of this happen in the last issue of X-Men. And there's a few things different too. Like the artist didn't draw any of the demons that Magic brought up to cause an earthquake. We don't see any of that here. So Gail Simone just kind of writes some dialogue and says, and now earthquake, lots of them, and we see a little sound effect. But we don't actually see any of that happened in the last issue, which I think is kind of interesting. They just had the writer write it in here. So we've got Rogue Jubilee. She's in prison here, and she's trying to break out of the prison. She somehow like stole a fork from the commissary or something, and is able to break out of her shackles there. And the X-Men have arrived here in the Grey Malkin prison, the old X-Mansion, which is when Blob shows up, which is all stuff we've already seen. Rogue puts him to sleep by touching him, stealing all of his powers and memories, which is something we've already seen. This is kind of where we left off at the end of the last issue of X-Men here, with the two teams facing off. So now this is Dr. Ellis. She's the leader here of this prison. She hates mutants. Not a big fan of her. I mean, obviously we're not supposed to be, but I mean, as a character, I don't really like the character. Seems very generic, kind of one-note character. She hates mutants. She's a girl boss. Not much else to it there. She needs a little bit more depth, I feel like. But she's got these servants here, these guys who are subservient to her. There's like the soldier, her first lieutenant, whatever. And then this guy named Scurvy, who's, I don't even know about this character. Maybe he's shown up before in X-Men, I'm not sure. But she tells them to make them angry. So apparently he has some like powers of suggestion or telepathy powers or something. So Wolverine told Ransom not to touch Cyclops unless he touches his temple, because that means he's about to use his laser beams. But he was actually just using his comms. And so Wolverine's like, no, that was his comm. But Ransom's too late. Punches Cyclops. Kind of starts a fight between the team here. So I like we actually do kind of get a fight between these X-Men. Although it's just some random bickering. It's not any sort of real battle here. And Cyclops' X-Men team is almost kind of confused about why this is even happening, it seems like. Temper's calling Wolverine a traitor, which is ridiculous. Cyclops blasts Ransom back here. And that's when Rogue is like, oh, this is not good. This is not good at all, because the kids are now getting, beaten by the old guard here. And they really, and she probably realizes they stand no match for him. A guy like Ransom against Cyclops is no real fight. So she grabs Cyclops. Nightcrawler grabs Psylocke. They kind of end the fight here. Calico, she's broken back into this mansion. Actually, there's this whole weird storyline where she's been kidnapped, but since she's not a mutant, Dr. Ellis actually just releases her. And, which is a huge mistake on her part, because she just comes right back to try and rescue Jubilee and join up with her X-Men team. So Beast, he's been beaten by the guards the past few issues. He's had the worst of all these three, but he's trying to make his comeback here. Cyclops says, don't make me blast you, Rogue. Rogue's like, I just absorbed the Blob's powers. Take your shot. Cyclops says, I already did. And it's Juggernaut busting through the wall here. Rogue says they had everything under control, and then Juggernaut shows up. But this reveals to them that there's like this giant prison inside a prison, basically. Like the solitary confinement. They think it might be Charles that's in there. We get this really great shot of all the X-Men together, which is an awesome looking panel in the shadows. I really love that. I feel like this could have been a cover for sure. But some bad guys show up. They're like, not so fast. And it's the Blob again, along with Siren. And I think this is Toad. And we've got some like Sentinel dogs here. So kind of weird that we got rid of Blob earlier in the issue. And then the final reveal on the last page is just him coming back with his kind of makeshift Brotherhood of Evil Mutants team here. And if this is Toad, I thought Toad was killed back in the Wolverine ongoing series a few months ago, and there was no more resurrection, so I don't understand how he's here. Which is one thing I loved about the Krakoan era. They had this built-in device to resurrect mutants. They could kill people off, bring them back at will, and it was the resurrection. And they had all these things put in place to keep it from kind of being this abused system, with Professor X saying it took a lot out of him to resurrect people each time. There's a little bit of darkness that got brought to the surface every time they got resurrected. So it was something that, the X-Men didn't want to do, but they could if they had the opportunity. And, the writers eventually just started abusing it. And by the end of the Krakoan era, the X-Men were just going into battle against Orcus over and over again. And, X-Men were getting killed and just being resurrected like it was nothing. I just thought that was just very interesting. But now we've got, Toad, like I said, he got killed off, but now he's just back. There's really no explanation to why Toad is still alive, if that even was Toad. But another thing I noticed flipping through this book here, I think mine got cut weird. I think this book got cut off. Look, it looks cut off. What happened here? The top of my book just looks like cut. So, you can even see it. Look, it definitely was. You can see it going diagonally down instead of straight across there. So, definitely not a mint condition book. I've never seen something like that before in a Marvel comic. So I have been noticing the quality of the actual paper and staple and everything in Marvel comics has been pretty poor recently. So I don't know. Did you guys see this too? Did you get something like this in your issue where it looks cut wrong? So there's even a little scrape up here on the top I noticed. So very interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, let me know what you guys think. Thanks again for watching the video. If you've made it this far, please subscribe, please like. Really helps out. And I do post daily comic book reviews, so stick around for that. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Go read comics.